All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we got my guy Anthony Schlegel here with us. It'll be a big show for us today. A lot going on. Obviously, Buckeyes lose to Oregon, drop their first one of the season, 30-31. A very tough contest, back and forth, all over the place, and so that was obviously a very, very disappointing situation that they had to deal with. And disappointing situation, I think, for most Ohio State fans. I heard my score prediction on Friday. I thought Ohio State would ultimately win this game 31-17. 31 ended up being the right number. Defensively, not great. And there's a number of things. I've got the scoring summary report. I got the stats stuff here, Schlegs. I looked through it. I got all kinds of notes and everything else. Just kind of your top-of-the-line thoughts from the game here on Saturday.
Oh, I like how you just throwing it to me right off the jump, Bob. I'm here from in Findlay, Ohio. Just a guy being a dude on a official visit for my son in baseball. Caught it all over the weekend. Oh, it was tough to digest. Here's the deal, man. Tough competitive game, matchup game. 2 versus 3, hostile environment. Jeff Schwartz talked about how it was going to be bumping in Eugene, and it was from all the things that I heard. But in this game, when you want to have a matchup game, you can't make mistakes. Then we just made too many of those mistakes. And because of that, you have the outcome that we all didn't want. But I still go back to the 2014 season, Bob, when we lost to Virginia Tech and what that did and that momentum for the rest of the season to be able to be national champions. I look at this. I trust in our guys. I believe in our guys. I think corrections are going to be made. And it's across the board. But there is not a for all the things that I've heard, and we'll get into all those, Bob, I'm still confident in the Buckeyes.
Yeah, what's interesting about this, we're going to get into a lot of the different little tentacles, if you will, all the different branches of this. We're going to have Cardale Jones hopefully joining us here on the next segment to talk about it as well. But there's a number of things that you could look at. But the reality is you lost a 1-point game to the number 3 team in the country on the road. Very, very talented. You made some mistakes offensively, made some mistakes on special teams. Things were wholly correctable. Defensively, there were some issues that are going to need to be fixed and going to need to be looked at. And that's going to be tough as they try to figure out exactly what was going on. But in totality of it, Ohio State fans are going to look at this, and obviously it's going to be very, very sobering. The reality of it, what happened. But this isn't 15 years ago where if you lose this, you're out of the BCS National Championship. It's not even the college football playoff, which I believe losing this game with how everybody else has played this year wouldn't have eliminated you back then either. The reality is now in a divisionless Big Ten, you could probably and may possibly play Oregon again in the Big Ten Championship. I don't know if anyone thought Ohio State was going to go undefeated this year, Schlegs, like literally not lose a game, go 16-0. I don't think anybody would have anticipated that. You lose a game against a really good team. And locally it stings, and it stings a lot because you feel like anytime that Ohio State loses, it's because they got outplayed and because they always have the best players. And maybe it's coaching. Maybe there's some scheme stuff in it. Maybe guys just didn't make plays. And we'll get into a lot of the individual elements of it. Denzel Burke picked a bad day to have a bad day. You get an onside kick. It probably was intentional, but it's tough to pull off where you hit one of the frontline return guys with the ball or able to recover it so that you get that there. Ohio State got a little benefit of the doubt with Willis Kazmarek, the opening play. Or the opening drive could have been an interception or fumble recovery or whatever it was. That could have happened. You get the benefit on that due to some hurry up. But when it comes down to it at the end, you have a chance to get a stop. You hold them to a field goal. Then you have a chance to go down and score a touchdown. You get a bad call. You get Dan Lanning taking advantage of a call and a situation with 12 men on the field, which has been changed over the last 10, 11 years. About how that's adjudicated and how that works and why that probably needs to be changed back to where it was. So you have that happen. You lose Josh Simmons. You lose 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘. Josh Simmons probably done for the season. 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 is probably going to be all right. And then all of a sudden with that, you sit there And at the end of the game, like, you're still only down a point driving. And if you ultimately don't get the pass interference, OPI, the pass interference on JJ Smith, then you put yourself in a position for a 35 some odd yard field goal, a chip shot. You get the OPI, it backs you up. They throw a 12th guy out there. And like I said, we'll get into it. And Will Howard, I didn't love the call that came in. He's trying to pick up yards to give his team the best chance for a field goal, slides it out. You're a second behind. Was it a wise decision? Do you throw it away? I mean, do you bury it in the ground and then just take your chances with 55-yarder? Maybe an extra 5 or 6 yards would have been perfect. Maybe 8 to 10 would have been really nice. So you're trying to do the best that you ultimately can there. And so I get all that. I understand it. And nationally, here's the reality of this is, in a college football era now, when you have teams that are winning and losing, Alabama, they were ready to say that Kalen DeBoer was the illegitimate bastard son of Nick Saban and Bear Bryant, after he beats Georgia and everything's the greatest. Well, then all of a sudden you lose a game, and then South Carolina is taking you down to the wire. They're crazy all up in arms about it. There's a bunch of teams that have struggled this year. I mean, Texas has really been the lone team that has looked really good the entirety of the season. And so with all of that stuff happening, when you lose, you simply drop 2 spots down. Everybody was thinking, would this be the same situation that happened with, Bama and Georgia? Would they get the benefit of the doubt with everything? Yeah, I think there is the question on that. Of would they get the benefit of the doubt? And I think the pollsters and everybody gave them that. We'll see what the CFP selection committee thinks. But ultimately, I think that nationally, people looked at this game and said, that's a really good team. That's a really good team. They played each other. One team made one more play than the other. One team had a shot to win. They didn't. And they lost by a point. And they were on the road in an incredibly hostile environment. We'll get to environments and everything else in a little bit. Schlegs, before we get you out of here, or get out of here and we get to Cardale coming up, any other thoughts to kind of add and sprinkle in there before we start high-level stuff, before we start drilling down on details?
Yeah, I just kind of look at the mistakes that we had. I think it was 2 drives before the end when we ended up kicking a field goal to go up. There's 2 false starts. Ohio State had 70 penalty yards in this game that impacted us. Here's the thing that I look at. I thought guys played extremely hard. From the beginning of the game to the end of the game. Were there some things that they showed on tape that we weren't prepared for necessarily? Yeah. Are there things that we have to clean up? 150%. But I just look at how hard they're playing all the time and what that does. And I think from the perception of nationally, this is a 2-3 matchup. Guess what? You got one next week. It's going to be Texas and Georgia, right? We're going to find out a lot about Texas next week when they play that one. So that's what you have now in an expanded Big Ten. You got Oregon in the mix now, really good football team. Penn State won on the road. You got them in a couple weeks after the bye week after Nebraska. Here's the thing. It's all about what do you do to be one step better the next week when you go play Nebraska. Because at the end of the day, they got a bye week and then they got the gauntlet. How are you going to respond? And you need a little bit of adversity. They got it, and they got it with a 1-point loss on the road to the number 3 team in the country. We're going to break down all the intrinsic things in that allowed that to transpire, but I still feel good about the Ohio State Buckeyes 2024 version.
All right. Well, we got one of the Buckeye legends, 12 gauge, with us. He was out working with CBS, doing a great job out there. He's in the airport flying back. He's going to give us 10 minutes, though, and talk about this Buckeyes game and everything that he saw from it, from his perspective, here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. we got our guy Cardale Jones, 12 gauge himself, live from the airport, getting ready to fly back. So excited to have him join us here for a little bit to hop on and talk a little bit about everything that's going on with this game. So when we get Cardale, Pat, throw him on, and we'll dive on into that with everything. And here he is.
There's our guy. There's our guy.
Yeah.
Yes, live from the airport, cruising
From
around.
the airport.
Hey, we appreciate it, sir. Just walking around, walking through the terminal. Kind of, what are your thoughts on this game off Jump Street? Is the big picture stuff that you took away?
First and foremost, thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the show. Enjoy everything you guys bring to a different dynamic of everything surrounding Buckeyes. So, big fan of you guys, clearly. But I think when you look at the dynamic of what happened Saturday, that's two of the best teams in the country. And I think you guys already mentioned it. I think that the college football world was put on notice of not just how great, we expected Oregon to be, but how they performed at a high level. I mean, these guys played unbelievable from beginning to end. I think they had one or two punts the whole game. But for them to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State and all the talent that they have and, ultimately coming out with a W, this game could have went any way. It's no one thing that I can say, hey, man, this cost Ohio State or Oregon really took advantage of this. I think it was just two heavyweight teams going at it, and ultimately, one team can win the game.
So you're not in the camp now. Fire Ryan Day. He can't win the big game because the amount of people I've heard say that already now. I mean, it's just been kind of
man. First and foremost, you don't look at a Ryan Day or a coach of that status and say get rid of him, because one, if you get rid of him, who are you going to go get? Two, what happened? We try to nitpick on the small things that ultimately didn't get them that W. I don't think it's that simple. I think one team ultimately just beat the other team. I think is that simple to me. But when you start to try to make accusations or false narratives of you need a coaching change, you can't deny what this guy have done in his short tenure at Ohio State. You can't deny his resume and the things he's able to do with not just developing on this level, but the next level as well. Yeah, well, we'd like to see Ohio State win every freaking game they play. But I tell people all the time, you think Oregon didn't want to win that game too? So, sometimes we as a fan base get spoiled sometimes with the expectation. I think Will Howard said it best earlier on in the week is like, you keep hearing that narrative, national championship or bust. Of course, as players, you're not thinking like that, but you at a place where you have that pressure they expect that every year. As a player, you expect that. That's what you go out there and play for. As a fan base, as a crazy fan base that Buckeye Nation is, that we all love to death, that's what they expect as well. But the reality is it's not that easy.
Hey, I'm gonna bring this because you're a quarterback, and we talked, a lot about, even last year and our quarterback, and is he elite enough? Can he get it done? You got a matchup game, 2 versus 3. I'm gonna read this off to you. Okay, 28 of 35. That's 80%. 326, 2 touchdown passes and a rushing touchdown pass, no interceptions. Right? That's Will Howard in this game. And I think sometimes, and I saw some of the comments, Bob, not elite, not good enough. Like, are you kidding me? I want a quarterback, a national champion winning quarterback's perspective on how Will Howard played in that game.
I don't think anything else he could have done in that game to help his team win the game. And I think there's a lot of things that ultimately Ohio State came up short on. You guys mentioned earlier, the penalty yards and, getting field goals at times where you could potentially got some touchdowns. But when you talk about stats like that, completing 80% of his passes, no turnovers, getting it done through the air and on the ground, what else do you want from a quarterback? This was 2 great teams, 2 veteran quarterbacks. Dillon Gabriel has the most starts in college history and is going to go down as one of those stat sheet stuffer quarterbacks, and Will, he played in big moments. He won a Big 12 championship game before. So when you talk about can this guy be elite or help you get to the next level in your program, absolutely.
Break down that final play. And everybody likes to look at stuff, and I try not to focus on that too much. But when you get into it, Cardale, you're sitting there, it's a 55-yard field goal. You got 6 seconds. You have a timeout, so the full field is open to you. The route combination was more to the side. There wasn't really a quick outlet. I didn't know from a quarterback perspective, looking at that, like what else that would have been a better situation for him to do than to try to get what you can and maybe then burn the TO.
I think this is a great learning experience, not just for Will Howard, but the offensive staff. I think the emphasis would have been, hey, if your first read in there, throw it away because of the time essence, right? 6 seconds is right on the cusp of running 2 quick plays, right? So I would have, it looked like Will was dropping back, and it don't look like the route combination was a too deep of a combination, but it did look like he went through his first or second, potentially third read, and he was like, oh man, my mental clock is going on. So I think they're going to learn from that perspective of, hey, if it's not your first read, throw it to the stands, and we had tried a long Hail Mary, but it looks like they were trying to get at least 5 to 6 yards to add on to potential a shorter field goal or a better chance at a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and another thing too, maybe even a check down, right? So if they're trying to protect the boundaries, and again, I haven't gone back and looked, like little safety outlet. Go back to, some of the things that you saw in this game defensively from a quarterback's perspective, because Dillon Gabriel was able to find the soft parts of that zone. They ran a lot more deeper routes in this game than they had in the past, because his passing average for predominantly the most of the year has not been to what it was in this one. They took some deeper shots. As a quarterback sitting back, guys playing zone, not pressuring your face, like how does that impact being able to go down there, sit through, having veteran wide receiver core, which actually caught my eye how good their wide receiver core is to be able to find those soft spots?
That's the great part about it. I think, one thing you got to be very cautious playing a veteran quarterback. Dillon Gabriel have seen every blitz combination, zone combination, man combination you can probably think of when it comes to being a defensive mastermind, which Jim knows kind of get the credit for being. So I think it's a little bit of, hey, I got to let my guys go out here and win some of these one-on-one battles and not put this kid in position to make it a lot easier on him, because the times where Ohio State did bring a lot of pressure, or more pressure than we was used to seeing throughout that game, he made us pay. So I think in that aspect, yeah, it's very easy for the quarterback to sit back in zone. You only got 4 guys rushing. You got 5 to 6 man protection. Eventually, I'm going to find the open guy.
Yeah, and he was able to get that done. Ohio State ran the ball okay in the first half, pretty well. I mean, Trey had 2 big hitters, total 70 yards, I think 53 and 17. But outside of that, a little bit rough running the football in a big hostile environment, Cardale. I mean, how important is it for that offense to be able to pound the rock, to take some heat off of the quarterback?
Well, I mean, it's extremely important. First and foremost, one thing that Coach Mick used to always say, when you go into tough environments or road games, period, you got to pack your run game. And you got to pack your toughness clearly each and every week. And I wouldn't say it was a lack thereof. I do think when you look at those 2 big hitters, it was when it was before Simmons got hurt on our left tackle side. So I don't know if they didn't feel as comfortable running those type of plays anymore to the left, or just having a run game staple period. But on the flip side of things, Will was still 80%, completing over 80% of his passes. A lot of those things that fell on his shoulder, and especially getting him involved in the run game and making the right decisions. I would love to see them run the ball a little bit more in some of those situations where you're not putting so much on his shoulders. But at the end of the day, he handled it really well. I don't think it was anything they could have done or Will could have done individually, more or less, that helped them get this win.
Hey, real fast, you got like 30 seconds. 2014, lose to Tech. What is said in the locker room that spurred that on for the remainder of that season?
I'm sorry, repeat that, Schlegel.
No, hey, 2014, lost to Tech. What was said in that locker room that got you, that helped push you guys forward to win that national championship that year?
I think it was more so just a gut check moment, looking yourself in the mirror. What have you done more? What did you do to ultimately not get the outcomes you wanted? And I think you being a part of that staff at the time, we saw instant change in mentality. We saw instant change in everything, because we sometimes fall in that category of, sometimes it's just good enough to roll your helmets out there and you're going to win the game. I definitely don't think and get the vibe that this team did that versus the number 3 team in the country. But you learn so much about yourself and as a team after a loss like this. And the great thing about the new playoff system is that this is not going to hurt Ohio State as much. It would hurt them in the 14 playoff system. We're most likely going to see a rematch between Ohio State and Oregon, and potentially a Big Ten championship game, or even in the playoffs. And me, selfishly, I hope they're not in the top 5 because I want to see top 4. I want to see a home playoff game in the shoe. So that's just my selfishly opinion and want as a fan. But I guarantee you, these guys are still, everything they want is still right in front of them. They can still be a top 4 seed. They can still go out here and dominate and still go out here and ultimately win a national championship.
All right, well, Cardale, we appreciate your time. Does a great job on the desk for CBS Sports. You can see him all around Columbus, man. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Cardale Jones live from the airport. I believe he's down in Lauderdale, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where they're at. Maybe Miami, Florida, though. Doing this great job there for CBS on the desk and kind enough to join us here on this Monday following that Oregon loss. I want to tell folks about this. Attention, parents and athletes, listen up. Protect what matters most with X-Sport mouth guards. Trusted by professional athletes and designed by an NHL team. Dentists, they're scientifically proven to help absorb those high-impact hits to protect both your teeth and your brain. X-Sport mouth guards feature 3 layers of custom protection, patented carbon fiber, custom fit to your unique smile with 3D printing. How about that? They 3D print those bad boys. That means more protection, better performance, maximum comfort, clear communication so you can focus on your game and not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Exportguards.com/Bobby. Save 15% on Export. Protect what matters most. All right, coming up next. Mention that defense a little bit. Sitting in those zones, Dillon Gabriel was able to complete some passes. Schlegs are going to break down the defensive effort, the performance, what could have been done maybe a little bit differently here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just, that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and great job by our guy Cardale right there, Mr. Cardale Jones, 12 gauge national champion, former player when Schlegs was the strength coach, getting him right and getting him ready. Schlegs, something you were doing all the time. We talk about that defense and just some numbers. Here's I got the NCAA statistical report. Give up 151 yards on the ground. Jordan James, 118. Dillon Gabriel, 4 for 32 on the ground. Dillon Gabriel, 23 of 34 for 331. 2 touchdowns, and obviously the 1 long ball to Evan Stewart. Tej Johnson was their leading receiver coming in, but this is a really, really good receiving corps, Schlegs. It's a very, very talented offense and an offensive line that has improved dramatically. Ohio State never really got much pressure on Dillon Gabriel. What would have been your solution for the pressure and coverage combo of how those things need to be married and how that should look?
Well, here's the deal, guys. I think the plan was, and again, I have no clue, but just looking at what it was, try to keep everything in front of you. Well, that's hard when you have explosive plays, and I'm trying to remember what they were off the top of my head, but it was like 69, Like there was 5 of
They had,
them,
they,
right?
they had 8 explosive gains.
Right. And that's
6 were through the air, so 20 plus yards.
Yep. And so when you look at that, if that's the point that you're trying to make, well, you gave up explosive plays in this game, which we've seen in the past. The explosive games, that's what's killed us defensively in the past. So again, when you have a veteran quarterback, this is something that Jim Haycock and Luke Fickell always talked about. You got to affect the quarterback in some capacity. You got to put pressure in his grill, right? And if you can't do that with 4, you got to bring somebody. Now, with that comes fire zone coverage. That's still, but it's man within a zone, matching those guys. Maybe a little bit more physical at the point of attack when they want to run the bunch to just like knock somebody off their route to give you time. When guys are free to run unabated from the line and you're trying to go back there and play zone, boom, guy just runs right by you. Now you're playing catch up and then also looking for the ball while you run when you're not in phase. Like that can't happen. So to me, could they have taken some more chances? That's what they're going to look at in this game. Jeff Schwartz had already talked about, like, there were some things where they were throwing those short passes. They did not do that in this game, man. They went straight down. There wasn't a lot of physicality. There wasn't a lot of reroutes from where they were coming. So to get them off that timing, just being able to stand up there and then throw into the void of the zone for those explosive plays, that's kind of what I saw. So to negate that, you got to get pressure and you got to do it right. But Jeff Schwartz, man, he was on this. Like, you kind of knew when Ohio State was going to come and when they weren't going to come. It's one thing to show it, right? And then you show it and then you aren't coming. Like, that wasn't fooling anybody. I think they did a really nice job being able to pick up when we did blitz, but you still, number one thing in a game like this and a veteran quarterback, you got to affect them.
Yeah, you got to move the pocket. And so here's the thing. Like, they played a lot of man in the back end. They were playing a lot of press. And I'm not a huge fan of playing a ton of press if you're not going to mix it up some, and you're not, when you're playing man Schlegs, bringing some pressure with that. And so, because you're letting your guys hang out. And there were times where, they're zone dropping. And I don't know if it was because, like, the spy, that they were worried about Dillon Gabriel getting out of the pocket. And obviously he used his legs, had the long touchdown run, but wanting to keep him in. And it's a fine line, because I'm a believer, if you're going to try to, do that, you've got to kind of umbrella it. If you're going to drop 8, play softer zone and make him kind of pick through the zones to do that, as opposed to, like, if you're not really going to go and bring pressure, if you play man, like, you leave yourself susceptible to the big play. And that's ultimately what happened. Now, Denzel Burke picked a bad game to have a bad game, Schlegs. I don't think anybody would doubt that he's a very good corner. He's very talented. I think he'll bounce back. But part of it was, they had a lot of time to throw the football. And so either A, like we talked about, bring pressure, or B, like, the one of the things you can do is run some line stunts. And I was surprised to not see a whole lot of, and maybe it was me missing it, but I'm pretty sure, like, it seemed like they really weren't running any games or any stunts up front. And that's another way to be able to get pressure. And this defensive line, they've looked good when they've been running games and being able to move around in those line stunts. Those have been effective metrics for pressure. I don't know if they were just worried about opening up running lanes for him or what, but it didn't seem like there was any of that added push. When you don't affect a quarterback, as you talked about, Schleich, it is a tough road to hoe on the coverage side.
Yeah, and you look at this, both teams, 17, 16 sacks coming in. I think was it 𝗟𝗓𝗓, right? He had a sack. I'm gonna tell you this, man. Their defensive line played very, very good, man.
They're good. Their D line is one of the best.
I know Tosh. Like, guys, I coached with Tosh with the Jaguars, man. Tosh is a fanatical dude. And he had those guys ready to go. They ran to the football. They were very aggressive. So did our guys, right? But I think that, to your point, Bob, if you are going to have somebody that's the spy, one of the ways of adding pressure is to dead dog that guy, right? Like, you allow guys to have games. You got to fill the void. You know where they are, and then you could potentially go dead dog. I mean, just come and end up blitzing the quarterback if you are
rush, kind of delayed rush, and man, like your ad rush with your linebacker. If the running back tight end stays in, you add in late, and I think that's a smart way to get the extra rushers, the QB. Yeah,
and here's the other thing too. When you look at Dillon Gabriel and everything that they did, when you have a team like this and you are trying to play zone, the number one thing that disrupts the timing is the physicality in the first 5 yards. Now, again, in college, like, you can abuse them as long as you want to until the ball is in the air, but you got to get them. You just can't let guys run in the seams or run unabated, right? That starts at the line of scrimmage and being able to be physical. So again, this is something that they're looking at. I'm not going to say that I'm sitting here and watching the all 22 and you're just going to give you the absolute breakdown. I'm just talking about what I saw when I was watching the game, and I'm writing notes, and I have like 4 pages of notes here. Top things I saw guys fight until the end. Okay. So I saw guys playing extremely hard. You saw some really good things. You had a couple of goal line stands in there, right? Held them to a field goal. You get the ball at the 2-yard line. You know, you saw some really good things, but then you saw all the other things. And here's the other thing too, guys. Like, we've had great corners come out of this program. Why can somebody be a great corner? Well, because they got to get the ball out on time when you have pressure into the quarterback's face. And you can do that through a variety of ways. And if the pass rush ain't working that day, you got to add somebody in. You might have to flip the script a little bit. But these are all things that they're going to look at, they're going to learn from, make corrections, and now you're about ready to run into the gauntlet here, starting with Nebraska in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And so we'll get into some of the other stuff that ultimately comes with that. One of the things that we saw, a number of penalties, and those were mostly on the offensive side, and most notably that OPI came into the game averaging less than 4 penalties a game, one of the top 10 teams, Schlegs, for least penalized in the NCAA. Obviously, 8 penalties for 70 yards. That wasn't great by any stretch. But the explosive gains, that's to me where this you come back on this. You didn't really have any game-changing plays on defense. They didn't have any sacks. They didn't have really any big TFLs to speak of. You know, there were no caused fumbles. There was no interceptions. Like, you didn't get any turnovers. And so defensively, there wasn't a ton there to be able to get everybody really excited. Like,
yeah, here's the thing, guys. We had an opportunity when they had that when they had the fumble. You had an opportunity to try to hold them a field goal, and it was bang, bang, touchdown, right? Then they kicked the onside kick. That was real. You're on the 50. You're going to kick it right at a guy. It just so happened to hit him. They got it. That was intentional. That was not fake. That was a real deal. Why not take that opportunity to do so? Boom, you get it. Off that short field, you get 9 points, because when they scored the first one, that's when they had the extra point, throw it up in the air type deal, right? So here, but you also had some, ones where you held them on the 2-point conversion, but those things matter, man. Sudden changes matter. And then you look at where they were the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half, and obviously the end of the game. That last drive that they put together that allowed us to only have a couple minutes or a minute or so on the clock at the end, that was a big series for us to potentially get a stop, because they were getting the ball out of half. But as a defense, like, that's when you have to rise up. It's like, hey, they got a turnover. Boom, next play. But it was a run, and it was a run, and then that was it, right? Touchdown. Like that, those things can't happen. You just got to bow up. Again, things that are correctional, things that they're going to look at, but those are opportunities that you got to seize as a defense. You want to be an elite defense.
Yeah, it's you've got to rise up. And it felt like Ohio State was about to hit a knockout punch there a couple of times, Schlegs, on offense. If Q doesn't fumble, if you're able to get, go down and score, like get that two score lead, it felt like it was about ready to turn. But there is a concerning trend for some of these, and we'll say bigger games. And part of it is bigger games, the team's going to have great offense, and that's all part of it. And so there's going to be more yardage, but you've got to find a way to make sure that you're limiting some of those big explosive plays. A trend that we've seen here under this defense that we'll get to here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, welcome here into Headlines, brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health offers personalized treatment plans for those that want to feel better. Whether you're struggling with weight loss, muscle loss, poor sleep, low energy, Affinity can help you with all that. Even if you're just having a hard time getting around, chasing after the kids, you don't feel like you have the same energy and juice for life anymore. Go check them out. They provide expert guidance to help you safely reach your health goals. And they've got all of Ohio covered with locations in Cleveland and Columbus. So don't wait any longer. Set up a free consultation by going to affinitywholehealth.com. That is affinitywholehealth.com. Schlegs. So as we look at this, look at some of the big game stuff. And, Ohio State relinquishing 496 yards, basically almost 500 yards against Oregon on Saturday night. You look at back since Jim Knowles got here. We can toss this up, Pat, if you would. Jim Knowles, top 5 games at Ohio State. And you look at these, and, these are 5. They're 5 of the biggest, but they're also, I guess they're 4 of the biggest. But also, some of the worst here. You've got 2002 Michigan, 530 yards. You've got 2022 Michigan, 2022 Georgia, got 533 yards. You've got 2023 Michigan, 338 yards. And then 2024 Oregon, 496 yards. So those are his top 5 games when you're playing top 5 teams. That's what it looks like. Those teams are going to have great offenses. We get it. I understand that. You're not going to hold them to 100 yards of total offense. You're not going to probably hold them to 14 points. I thought, though, there were times where they would be able to get this done. And I think each one of those games, you look and the story is a little bit different, but they've got to find a way to execute and find a way to get that edge. Find a way to get that edge in the big game. That's what they've really been looking for. That's what they've been trying to figure out. They were on the road with Oregon. The offense put up 31. That should be enough for a team to win. That should be enough to be able to get it done. They didn't have the big impactful plays. Now, they hold them to a field goal at the end. They do have a goal line stop. They did some really good things in this game, Schlegs, but in totality, when we've got to some of these bigger moments, I think you've got to figure out, are you letting the offense dictate too much to you? That Georgia game, they gave up the big plays late. People said you were too aggressive, maybe a little too aggressive against Michigan in 2022. In 2023, did you back it off too much in trying to find that sweet spot? When you lose, people are going to nitpick everything, but can you mix some things in a little bit more than maybe they have?
338 to Michigan in 2023. That's not necessarily on them when you go look at that stat, but you got to stop the run. Here's my thing, Bob, is you got to be authentically you. And having played for Fick, like, we knew exactly what we were doing defense, and we're going to go play really, really fast. And at the end of the day, if you got to change some things up, you got to change some things up. But here's the thing. You have some really, really talented dudes in there. Somebody's got to win their one-on-ones. Like we talked about it a lot earlier in the year, right? The game of football is 11 one-on-ones, guys doing their job, making an impact. So part of the ownership is on the players to go make an impact. Part of it is if the impact's not being made, what can we do in certain situations to allow us to go be the aggressor and to set the tone as to what we want you to do defensively. And in this particular game, there was no pressure on the quarterback. And when you have a guy that's very, very good that can stay in the pocket, Jeff Schwartz even talked about how he thought they were going to do more play action pass and get him out of the pocket to change the release point because of the pressure that comes from Ohio State. He did not have to. He was able to just step up into the pocket and throw. And a guy like that, you'd rather get him on the edges or at least, up the middle to go to your contain guys to be able to make a play. Hard for guys to play on islands when they have all that time in the world to be able to step up and throw a pass to create separation or to do a stutter and go and you bite on it. But the big plays in those games, Bob, the big plays are the ones that kill you. And in this game in particular, it was those same big plays that ultimately was the downfall for the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, and the big plays, there was a couple of them, and Denzel was a part of them. Sometimes you pick a bad game, Schlegs, to have a bad game, And in that, like, I think maybe you give a little more safety help. Maybe they gave some safety help there. Like Denzel Burke is a really good cornerback. He did not play well, but I think he would be the first person to tell you that. And so there's like different options there. Do you let the player play through it? Do you pull him out? You've got a really talented third corner outside in Jermaine Matthews. And he's shown that he can go in there and play really well. Do you go to him and let Denzel come out for a play or a series and maybe just chill out, relax, see what's going on, watch it from another perspective, get back in there? Maybe Jermaine's playing well. Maybe you ride the hot hand. Do you risk like destroying confidence and relationship there? I don't think so, because Denzel's a confident guy, and I think Tim's got a great relationship with his players. So there's different ways that you can handle this. I don't – hindsight's always going to tell you if you were right or wrong, but I don't know if it'll tell you if what you could have also done or in lieu of that would have had a different result in this situation. So I think that's where some of the problem is looking at this is trying to figure out, if you do go to Jermaine Matthews, is it better? Maybe you give more safety help earlier. Maybe you play some more zone, some two deep, and do some things to take some heat off. I don't know. I know Denzel, like he can try to cheat a little bit, Schlegs, play some man with his eyes in the backfield and do some things that may not always be sound, because he's such a talented player and he's such a talented athlete that he can usually make up for that. Cost him a little bit. So I don't know. There's some things.
Well, we saw the same thing, right? JT probably has the quarterback on that. The defensive line has to run.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of do your job, right? Like, I don't need to be peeking in the backfield. And we really haven't seen wide receivers that can run like this, guys. We see them in practice 100%. We already kind of know what they do, right?
Yeah, you see these guys at Ohio State in practice. Like, they should be prepared. This is the best guys they'll probably face all year outside of Ohio State. Maybe Texas has receivers that are close to this level, possibly Alabama, but we'll ultimately see how that ends up breaking. All right, now we got our favorite segment coming up next. Guys, we're going to have questions all week coming at you. So please, questions, comments, throw them at us on X, throw them at us here. Follow Bobby Carpenter Show. Make sure that we're liking, subscribing, all of those things. We'll get to tailgate talk and answer your questions here next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real Truck.
All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we got a little tailgate talk where we answer your questions. It's always our favorite part. Remember, tailgate talk is brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Remember, the number one truck accessory brand in the United States, top selling upgrades for the ultimate tailgate party. Bring your truck to life, gear up for the season, and make sure you're ready to go at realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs, got a number of questions here. I threw some stuff out last night to see what people wanted to come with. And we've got one. A lot of this stuff centers around, well, we'll go with this first one that I saw here that came quickly from JB Bruce, talking about the likelihood, Schlegs, that we are eliminated from the playoffs if we lose to Penn State. The reality is this season is going to kind of be judged on these three big games, Oregon, Penn State, and then Michigan at the end of the season. I don't think a Penn State loss eliminates you as long as it's a game that looks like this. It's also a road game. If you play tough and you lose that thing, which I don't believe that they will, I think you're still in it. Now, that gives you zero margin for error, and you probably aren't getting in the Big Ten championship of that. But the one thing that you've got in Schlegs, you got a gem here, is that Indiana is now ranked and could be ranked at the end. Nebraska looks pretty good. And then if you beat Michigan at the end of the season, I still think you'd get in. Now you'd get in more like 9, 10, 11. You're not getting a home game, but you're not getting a home game coming out there, even if you don't get the bye. But I don't think it eliminates them.
No, if you look at Indiana, right? I'm just looking at their deal. They got what do they got? Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue. They got a chance until that Ohio State game. They're playing very, very well. Nebraska, not ranked, but you got Penn State, you got Michigan. That's what we ultimately know. You're not going to have a 2-loss non-Big Ten title, Ohio State, not in the college football playoffs. How does that look? I don't know. Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, right? Probably going to get 4 in this year, potentially. So, no, it does not eliminate you. This is an opportunity for them to grow.
Yeah. Next question here from 𝗟𝗜𝗚𝗘95 Schlegs. Why the drastic change in defensive performance with big games? Why the lack of pressure? I understand talent levels change against different teams, but there's been a huge drop-off in production. We kind of touched on that a little bit already, but kind of your thoughts on maybe the difference as to why this defense has looked so good, and then maybe in some of the biggest moments hasn't.
Yeah, I heard some terrible things like, why is our offensive line, do our guys need a new nutrition program or a new whatever? Guys, here's the deal. It's just good on good. Like, they all look like that. I mean, I thought that, Oregon's D-line looked really, really fast, right? They were slanting, they were angling, like they were moving the line of scrimmage horizontally and getting penetration. Like, we can do that stuff too, right? You talked about the games and able to impact the quarterback, Bob. I don't know. But what I do know is this, like, you've seen the trend. What adjustments can you make? Where you are? Like, that's a fine line of coordinating, right? We even saw on the offensive side of the ball, where were the deep shots in this game, right? We got guys that can blow the top off of somebody. Like, where were those? That we didn't even talk about that yet. So here's the thing that I know. You got to get it addressed. I think the guys want it to be addressed. And that's also on coaching to go make sure that it happens during practice. Another thing, I would say this too, in this game, we missed a lot of tackles, Bob.
We did.
So again, things that you got to work on, good versus good. This is why you want these type of tests. This is why having Washington early in the year would have been great for us, though that got taken out because they're now in the Big Ten. Hey, we got exposed in certain areas. Guess what? You got time to correct it this week on a bye week heading into Nebraska before you go to Penn State on the road.
Yeah, so you got a bye week to kind of marinate and sit in this. Last question, and you said it's good on good. You're not going to obviously play as great as you would against inferior competition. So there's that element of it as well, and everybody understands that. And then, folks, as long as we go through all this, I always keep the reminder, you lost by 1 point to the number 2 team currently in the country on the road. So the sky is not falling with all that. There are things that need to be improved, and things that if it aren't improved, will be tough. But I'll get into like a little bit of a theory of this year versus last year and maybe the differences with that and how this could actually maybe be a little more beneficial. We'll do the last one for today because there's a bunch of other things coming here. This is from Son of a Sailor, Schlegs, and you'll probably get a kick out of this one. If you were J.J. Smith and nothing is done to address the defense, would you hit the portal for a more complete team?
Wow. Terrible take. No, I'm not hitting the portal. I got the best team in the country, so I'm good. I'm good. That doesn't even make any sense. Recruiting classes, to the coaches, to the development. You lost one freaking game, bro. Get over it. How many TPS reports you doing? Like, I'm going to come over there and check out your sales material. Clean that bathroom really, really good. Like, your high GSF or clean that toilet. Like, I'm going to come evaluate you. No, we ain't going there for a more complete team. This is the most team. They just lost to the number 3 team in the country by 1 point on the road with multiple chances to win the football game while playing at our worst defensively. How about that? You play, they play at their best. We lost by 1 on the road. Get it fixed, guys. We understand that, but the sky is not falling. Let's go.
Let's go. All right, coming up next, we wrap up the show on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef With an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool and doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink garage beer. It's American and so can you. Garage beer, beer flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, before we get you out of here, big show tomorrow. We'll have Bill Bender back on. Excited to talk to him and everything that's going on. What are your final 15, 20 seconds thoughts on the game before we head to Tuesday?
Hey, this is it. Ryan Day had a quote that cost us. He was talking about Jeremiah Smith, I believe, but it should have come down to one play. I said that before. We want to leave no doubt, right? We talked about leave no doubt, take him out. I felt like we should have done that tonight. We did not. That's the point. He's evaluating his team. They did not. Oregon did. Good on good. It happened. So guess what? Keep swinging, keep getting better. Long season. It's still in it's still in the Buckeyes' control. Let's go get better.
All right. Well, that is it for this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show. Stay tuned. Make sure you lock in tomorrow at 12:30 as we continue to break this down and figure out how the Buckeyes are going to get back into this thing and get it rolling.